We've all heard those phrases people toss around when they want to step back. Not my monkeys, not my circus. Not my business. Not my issue. And look, I get why they're popular. Life is exhausting. People are overwhelmed. Everyone's trying to protect their time, their mental health, their peace. But there's a huge misconception baked into the way these sayings get used. And it matters because this misunderstanding quietly shapes how we respond to the world around us. Those phrases were never meant to be a permission slip to ignore real harm. They were meant to help you hold boundaries, not abandon responsibility. Somewhere along the way, "not my circus" became a kind of moral exit sign. Like if a situation is messy, uncomfortable, or tense, you're allowed to turn away and say, well, that's their problem. And sometimes, sure, it is. Sometimes stepping back is exactly what's healthy. But other times, that mindset becomes dangerous. Because it doesn't just help you avoid drama. It helps you avoid action, even when action is truly needed. Think about how often people are taught, directly or indirectly, to stay out of things. Mind your own business. Don't get involved. Don't make it worse. And if you grew up in an environment where conflict was punished, or where speaking up brought backlash, then staying quiet can feel like survival. Add fear on top of that. Fear of being wrong. Fear of embarrassment. Fear of confrontation. Fear that somebody will turn on you. Fear of retaliation. Fear of being labeled dramatic, nosy, or intrusive. So when something feels off, the brain starts bargaining. You tell yourself it's probably nothing. You tell yourself somebody else will step in. You tell yourself it's not your place, and you don't want to misread the situation. And in the moment, that story feels comforting. It feels safer. But here's the part we don't say out loud often enough. Most of the time, nobody else steps in. That someone else we're waiting for often doesn't exist. Or they're thinking the same thing you are. And when everyone backs away at the same time, harm keeps going. That's why this isn't just about words. It's about what silence allows. When people disengage automatically, patterns don't get interrupted. Abusive behavior doesn't get challenged. Predatory behavior doesn't get noticed early. People who are vulnerable don't get support when they need it most. And the longer something goes unchecked, the more it tends to grow. Silence, in those moments, isn't neutral. It functions like endorsement. Maybe not in intention, but in effect. Because when nobody pushes back, the message to the person causing harm is, you can do this here. And the message to the person being harmed is, you're on your own. And there's another consequence that doesn't get talked about enough, the personal cost of doing nothing. Because even if you successfully avoid the situation, you don't always avoid the aftermath. Later, the questions show up. What if I'd said something? What if I'd checked in? What if that moment was bigger than I realized? What if I was the only person who noticed? Those what-ifs can stick around for years. Ignoring your instincts doesn't erase them. It just buries them under guilt and second-guessing. And this is where the stakes become real. The risk of staying silent isn't theoretical. Real things happen while people look away. Sometimes a small moment of inaction becomes the gap where something escalates into something irreversible. Somebody's life can change course because a warning sign was brushed off. Abuse can go on longer because nobody disrupted the pattern early. In the worst cases, people get seriously hurt or killed. So when we say not my business indiscriminately, what we're often choosing is comfort over accountability, convenience over courage, and we're shifting the cost onto the person who's already least protected. Now, I want to talk about the other side because it's not just doom and gloom. Choosing to speak up can change everything. And I don't mean you have to become a hero. Intervention isn't always dramatic. It's often small, simple, and human. Sometimes intervening is just checking in. A quick, quiet, "Hey, are you okay?" Sometimes it's asking a question that breaks the momentum in a tense moment. Sometimes it's staying nearby, so someone isn't isolated. Sometimes it's documenting what you're seeing. Sometimes it's reporting something to a person who has the authority or responsibility to act. The key is this: every act of intervention introduces accountability. It creates friction where harm wants to move smoothly. It disrupts the easy path. It tells the person at risk, "I see you," and that alone can be powerful. If you pay attention to stories people tell after something bad happens, you'll notice a pattern. Often, they remember the one person who noticed. The one person who asked a question. The one person who paused and made space for them to get out, to get help, to breathe. Sometimes one voice is the difference between someone staying trapped and someone finding a door. And here's the tricky part: you might never get credit for it. You might never even find out what your intervention prevented. The ripple effects might be invisible to you, but that doesn't mean they aren't real. Now, I'm not going to pretend speaking up has no risks. It can be awkward. It can change how people see you. It can create conflict. In some situations, it can even be physically dangerous. But the conclusion isn't therefore, never intervene. The conclusion is discernment. There's a huge difference between getting pulled into unnecessary drama and stepping in when someone's safety, dignity, or well-being is on the line. Boundaries matter. Protecting your energy matters. But boundaries aren't supposed to turn you into a person who can watch harm and shrug. They're meant to help you engage wisely, not disappear when it counts. So if you're listening to this and you've ever felt that hesitation, that internal pause where you think, I should say something but I'm scared, or I don't want to be wrong, or it's not my place, I want you to hear this clearly. It is okay to speak up. You don't need perfect words. You don't need a complete plan. You don't need to know exactly what's happening with certainty before you do anything at all. You just need to honor the part of you that recognizes when something isn't right. That instinct exists for a reason. It's not random. It's not weakness. It's awareness. And even small actions can matter more than you'll ever know. And no, intervening doesn't make you dramatic. It doesn't automatically make you intrusive. It doesn't make you the villain in somebody else's story just because you refuse to ignore what was happening. It makes you present. It makes you awake. It makes you a witness in a world that desperately needs people who are willing to witness. And yes, you might make a mistake. That's part of being human. You can learn. You can adjust. You can get better at responding. But here's the hard truth. If you were right and you stayed silent, that's the kind of consequence you don't get to undo. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is feeling fear and doing something anyway. Even if it's small. Even if it's imperfect. Even if it's just creating a moment of pause where harm would otherwise keep moving. Sometimes the line between this isn't my business and I need to act feels blurry. But when someone's safety is at risk, that line gets clearer. When someone's physical or emotional well-being is on the line, when someone is being isolated, threatened, coerced, or harmed, that's not a time to hide behind a slogan. Because the impact of speaking up can be transformative. It can prevent suffering. It can shift outcomes. It can save lives. And even when it doesn't lead to an immediate resolution, it can give someone the message they needed most. You're not invisible. So here are my final thoughts. Silence in the face of harm is not neutrality. It's a choice. Sometimes it's an unconscious choice. Sometimes it's a deliberate one. But either way, it has consequences. And the power of a single person choosing to act is bigger than we like to believe. One question, one check-in, one report, one moment of presence can change the direction of a situation that was headed somewhere dark. Intervention isn't always easy. It can be uncomfortable. It can be inconvenient. It can require patience and bravery. But the cost of silence gets paid in someone else's suffering. And that's the part we need to stop normalizing. So don't mistake "not my circus" for permission to abandon people. Let it mean what it was always supposed to mean. Protect your energy from chaos that isn't yours to carry, but don't use it as an excuse to look away from harm. Your voice matters. Your awareness matters. Your willingness to step in, even carefully and safely, can be the difference between someone suffering in silence and someone being seen, heard, and helped. The world isn't shaped only by the people who do harm. It's also shaped by the people who notice and decide not to let it slide. Thank you for listening. Until next time.